Moolah Gang, so apparently two guys from Front Street and Gyro City Lil Mikey got killed, all in the same 24-hour span. Now, y'all know the history with Chief Keef and Front Street versus OBlock, so I don't know.
29 years old, sitting in a car at a gas station on 63rd and Drexel. Just another moment to turn deadly in seconds. Two men slide up in a white Mercedes. No warning, no hesitation, and the energy instantly shifts.
It's like everybody dying. Everybody that come home and from jail, from doing bid, that people that heard about, and then they came home and they started doing these interviews, or, you know what I'm saying, they trying to keep up with what's going on the internet or stuff like that, and you see a lot of them dead.
Words get exchanged, tension spikes, and before anyone can even process it, one of them pulls out a gun and fires straight into his chest. Just like that, Gyro City's Lil Mikey is gone, and chaos takes over online almost instantly. Within hours of the shooting, OBlock members start dropping cryptic posts all over social media. No direct names, no clear claims, but the message is loud enough for anyone paying attention. The streets don't need full explanations. They already know what it means, and people are reading between every single line. What really sets this apart from other Chicago street losses this year is how calculated it feels. This was not random, not a robbery gone wrong, and definitely not someone just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This traces back years, deep into a long-standing conflict that refuses to die down. A war that started back in 2011 and never cooled off, only evolved, getting louder and more public as time passed. A war that King Von turned into music, into major success, into millions, all while still being tied to the same streets that shaped it. And even after his death, that same energy never disappeared. It just kept moving through the people around him. OBlock has been carrying that weight heavy for OD, for Von, for every name tied to their side. And now Lil Mikey's name is getting added into that long, painful list. No exaggeration. King Von's issues with 63rd were not surface level. It ran deep, way beyond music, way beyond entertainment.
People in Chicago was cocky. I don't know what made him feel like he could sit on 63rd and Drexel just sit out though. But
anyone who really paid attention to his interviews or broke down his lyrics could hear exactly how serious it was. He was not just telling stories, he was speaking from real experience, turning real situations into songs that reached millions. And now, even after everything, the people connected to him are still standing in that same storm, still moving with that same mindset. How did King Von turn a real-life war into a full-blown career, only to lose his life in the middle of it all? And now Lil Mikey's death on March 27, 2026 is making one thing painfully clear. This situation is far from over, not even close. This is not something that faded with time. It is still active, still breathing, and still claiming lives in real time. OBlock, Parkway Gardens, 64th and King Drive. This place is not just a location, it is a symbol at this point. One of the most talked about housing complexes in hip-hop history, known worldwide because of what came out of it. This is where King Von built his name, where Lil Durk's circle runs deep, and where some of the most feared figures tied to Chicago street culture made their mark. But just a few blocks away, literally right down the road on 63rd Street, you have Ville, Gyro City, STL, all connected through the same side, all locked into this long-running conflict that never really cooled off. Here's where people get it twisted, though. This was never just about territory or corners the way outsiders try to explain it. This runs way deeper, way more personal than that. These are people who grew up around each other, crossed paths in school, saw each other almost daily, and over time that familiarity turned into something much darker. Names started carrying weight, losses started stacking up, and the cycle just kept spinning with no real pause for over 15 years straight.
I don't know. Shit, man. I heard about it I seen it last night on the internet. I'm just scrolling. First I thought it was just some clickbait. You know, the internet got a lot of clickbait on it.
This ongoing conflict did more than just take lives. It shaped an entire music wave that reached across the world. Chicago drill did not just appear out of nowhere. It was built from real experiences tied to this exact situation. Careers were made off it, stories were told through it, And at the same time, the losses never stopped piling up, even when the spotlight shifted away. And now, looking at how Lil Mikey ended up losing his life in that car, it becomes impossible to ignore just how active and unresolved this still is. To really understand this, you have to go all the way back to 2011, because that is where everything starts taking a serious turn. January 12th, 2011, Southside Chicago in the middle of winter, cold streets, heavy tension, and a moment that would change everything. A 15-year-old named Sean Dale Gregory, known around the neighborhood as Tuka, is standing at a bus stop on 63rd in St. Lawrence, just waiting like any other day. Nothing looks out of place at first. Nothing seems off until suddenly it all shifts. According to two witnesses, a man walks up casually, asks if another bus is coming, something simple, something normal, then moves behind the shelter like it is nothing. Seconds later, everything turns violent. Shots ring out, and Tuka is hit 4 times right there at the bus stop. Just 15 years old, gone in a moment that shocked the entire area. That single incident sent waves through the community, and people immediately started connecting dots, trying to figure out who was responsible. This part matters because Tuka had ties to 63rd Street, to STL, to the same group that names like FBG Duck, Lil Mikey, and FYB J Main would later be associated with. His death hit deep, and in the streets, many believed OBlock was behind it. Whether confirmed or not, that belief alone was enough to spark something bigger. But even that moment was not the true beginning, because before Tuka, there was O.D. Perry. O.D. Perry, connected to the Black Disciples in Parkway Gardens, was killed earlier, and his name ended up becoming the foundation for OBlock itself. The name carries history, and his death is often seen as the first domino in a chain reaction that kept building. Many people viewed Tuka's death as retaliation tied into that same sequence, and from that point forward, things were locked in. From 2011 on, 63rd and OBlock were no longer just rival areas. It became a full ongoing conflict with no clear end in sight. And what makes it even more intense is how both sides started rising in music at the exact same time. Chief Keef was taken off from OBlock, while FBG Duck was building momentum from the 63rd side. And they were not keeping things vague either. They were calling things out directly, referencing real situations, even mentioning people who had passed, turning real-life conflict into music that reached everywhere, calling out names, talking about real people still alive, posting everything online. It started turning into something way bigger than just street issues. Social media became part of the cycle, every post adding tension, every mention pushing things further, and every loss hitting harder than the last. By 2012, things took another tragic turn when Taekwon, a 13-year-old connected to the 63rd side, was shot and killed, adding even more pain to a situation that was already out of control. The grief on 63rd kept building year after year, 2013 into 2014, and the list of names kept growing on both sides with no pause button in sight.
But when I seen it, I'm like, nah, this is real, because then it was like everywhere. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, damn.
There was no break, no reset, just constant back and forth energy that kept escalating. And right in the middle of all this, a young person from Parkway Gardens, King Von, was watching everything closely, paying attention to how it all unfolded. He was taking in the environment, the stories, the losses, and slowly preparing to turn those real-life moments into something the world would hear. This is where King Von's story really begins to take shape, and it cannot be separated from everything going on around him. Raised in OBlock, Parkway Gardens, he grew up surrounded by this reality every single day. He saw things firsthand, experienced loss, and stayed closely tied to that environment from the start. So when he stepped into music, he did not hold anything back. He brought those experiences with him in a way that felt raw and direct. Von built his name off storytelling in a way that stood out immediately. He wasn't just dropping lines about situations, he was breaking them down, step by step, like you were right there watching it unfold. Tracks like Crazy Stories showed how detailed he could get, turning moments into vivid scenes that pulled listeners all the way in. Even people who had never been to Chicago could picture exactly what he was describing. And throughout it all, one of the main names tied into that tension, whether directly or indirectly, was FBG Duck, making the connection between music and real life impossible to ignore. Duck was seen as the main face of 63rd, the one people believed could take things to another level. His real name was Carlton Weekly, tied to areas like STL, EBT, and Jarrow City, and his presence carried serious weight. When he dropped Slide in 2017, it took off fast, racking up over 53 million views on YouTube and putting him in a whole different spotlight. That momentum led to a deal with Sony Music Entertainment, and at that point, it looked like he was right on the edge of breaking fully into the mainstream. For a lot of people on 63rd, he was the one they believed could represent them the same way Chief Keef did for OBlock. But the reality is, success in music does not stop what is happening outside of it. Things kept moving, and tension stayed high no matter how big the platform got. In 2019, King Von dropped Took Her to the O, and it wasn't just a regular track. It played out like a detailed story with clear references that people quickly connected. The visuals added even more layers, and later on, federal investigators would actually bring that video into court, pointing to it as part of a bigger narrative they were building. Then came 2020, and everything escalated even further. FBG Duck released Dead Bits, one of the most direct and aggressive tracks of his career, where he mentioned multiple deceased individuals tied to OBlock. The tone was bold, confrontational, and it sent a message that did not go unnoticed. Tension hit a new level, and the situation became even more serious in a very short time. August 4th, 2020, Chicago's Gold Coast, a high-end shopping area far removed from where most of this started. Around 4:26 in the afternoon, Duck arrived with someone close to him and stepped out near the Dolce & Gabbana store on Oak Street. Reports say he was there to shop for his son, just a normal moment in the middle of the day, but everything changed quickly. Surveillance later showed multiple individuals leaving Parkway Gardens and moving through the city in two separate vehicles, a Ford Fusion and a Chrysler 300. Those cars were tracked across several locations as they made their way north. Then, in a sudden burst of violence, multiple masked individuals got out and opened fire, with dozens of shots going off in seconds. It all happened fast, in broad daylight, in a place where people would not expect something like that to happen, which made the situation even more shocking to the public. Duck was hit multiple times in that attack, collapsing right there on the pavement while chaos broke out around him. His girlfriend and another person nearby were also injured as everything unfolded in seconds. By the time the shooter sped off heading west on Oak Street, FBG Duck was left fighting for his life in one of the most high-end areas of Chicago. He was later pronounced dead at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, turning what started as a regular afternoon into one of the most talked-about incidents in the city. Authorities would later argue this was not random at all. It was organized and thought out ahead of time. According to investigators, Duck had been seen earlier that day inside a store, and word spread quickly through calls and messages. From there, everything moved fast, with multiple people coordinating movements across different locations. Law enforcement sources described it as a structured setup, not something that just happened in the moment. Reports that surfaced during the investigation included claims from a confidential source who said there was money being offered for information or action tied to Duck, with figures that allegedly increased over time. Prosecutors later presented their theory in court, pointing to financial records and purchases they believe were connected to individuals involved, including expensive custom jewelry linked to OBlock affiliates. These claims became a major part of the case as authorities worked to piece together motive and intent. What is clear is that Duck's death hit 63rd hard, removing one of the most visible figures tied to that side at a time when his career was gaining serious traction. For many, he represented a path forward through music, and losing him in such a public way made the impact even heavier. At the same time, attention around the broader conflict only grew, with more eyes now focused on everything connected to it. Looking at the timeline makes it even more intense. Duck lost his life in August 2020, while King Von had already been building momentum and gaining recognition. With growing attention on the music and the stories behind it, everything became more amplified, and the connection between real-life events and rising fame became impossible to ignore. Von's album, Welcome to OBlock, dropped in October 2020, just 2 months after Durk was killed, and it made serious noise right away. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200, proving just how locked in people were to his story and his sound. The project was packed with raw, personal records that pulled listeners deeper into his world, and the attention around him kept growing fast. He was everywhere at that point, doing interviews, jumping on features, and building momentum alongside Lil Durk through the Only the Family movement. Money was coming in, his name was getting bigger, and he was quickly becoming the face of Chicago drill for a whole new audience. At just 26 years old, everything was lining up like he was about to dominate for years. The trajectory looked unstoppable, and the spotlight was only getting brighter with each move he made.
Then November 6, 2020 changed everything in an instant. Atlanta, Georgia, outside Monaco Hookah Lounge. What started as a confrontation in a parking lot suddenly turned into gunfire. The situation escalated fast. Shots rang out, and King Von was hit during the chaos. He was rushed to the hospital, but he did not survive, passing away at just 26 years old. The situation was not connected to the ongoing Chicago conflict tied to 63rd, but the outcome still hit just as hard. The reality of it all feels heavy when you look at the full picture. Someone who built a career telling stories rooted in conflict, who made it through everything tied to his environment back home, ended up losing his life far from it, in a completely different situation that escalated too quickly. After that, the impact on OBlock was impossible to ignore. Von had become a central figure, someone who turned real experiences into music that reached people everywhere. His voice carried weight, and his presence kept attention on everything connected to his background. When he was gone, that momentum shifted, leaving a noticeable gap. Not long after, legal developments tied to earlier events started moving forward, with multiple individuals facing charges connected to FBG Duck's killing, bringing even more attention back to everything surrounding this long-running conflict. All 6 individuals charged in the case were ultimately found guilty, facing serious federal consequences tied to racketeering and murder charges. These were not small outcomes. Some of them are now looking at life sentences, marking a major turning point in everything connected to that situation. For OBlock, this was another heavy loss, coming after already dealing with Von's death and the pressure building from multiple directions. The impact stacked up quickly, first losing a major figure like Von, then seeing several people connected to the case taken off the streets through convictions. It shifted the balance in a way that could not be ignored. On top of that, Lil Durk, someone closely tied to Von and OTF, was also dealing with legal challenges of his own, adding even more weight to everything happening at once. What once looked solid and untouchable started showing cracks under all that pressure, and through all of this, 63rd never disappeared from the picture. The tension never fully cooled off. It just stayed there, waiting, building, and carrying over year after year. Then fast forward to March 27, 2026, back to 63rd and Drexel in the Woodland area, a place already tied deeply into this history. Lil Mikey, 29 years old, known around Gerald City and recognized for speaking openly in interviews about ongoing tensions, was sitting in a car at a gas station when everything unfolded. A white Mercedes pulled up. 2 men stepped out, and what started as an argument quickly turned into violence. In seconds, a shot was fired, hitting him in the chest and leaving the scene in shock. He was rushed to the University of Chicago Medical Center in critical condition, but he did not survive, adding another name to a long list connected to this situation. And just like in previous moments, the internet reacted almost instantly. Posts began surfacing, messages that were not direct, not clearly stating anything, but carrying meaning for those who understand the context. Without making accusations or naming anyone, it is clear that certain online reactions followed a familiar pattern. In Chicago's street culture, those kinds of posts often speak louder than direct statements, and people who follow closely know how to read between the lines. No names needed, no claims spelled out, but the message still travels fast within the community, and that is what makes this stand out. It fits into a pattern that has been repeating for years, showing that despite everything that has happened, this situation is still active and still unfolding in real time.
Every time something happens on either side, social media starts moving in a way that tells its own version of events. It's like a coded system where people post just enough to send a message without saying anything directly. No full confessions, no clear claims, but the tone, the timing, and the wording all carry meaning. It becomes a form of communication that the streets understand instantly, even if outsiders miss it completely. Mainstream coverage often cannot fully decode it, but for those watching closely, the message is always there. Now here's why this goes deeper than just another headline. Little Mikey was not some unknown person caught in a random situation. He was someone people recognized, someone who had done interviews, spoken publicly, and shared insight about Jaro City and everything tied to it. He was connected to this history in a real, visible way, and people in the community knew exactly who he was and what he represented. That is what makes his death hit differently. It is not separate from the past, it is part of a timeline that keeps extending. What started back in 2011 with Tuka is still echoing years later, now reaching into 2026, showing just how long this has been going on, over a decade of back and forth, and it still hasn't slowed down in the way people might expect. Now this next part is something a lot of people overlook when talking about situations like this. Lil Mikey's case is still open, with no arrests announced and no suspects publicly identified so far. And when you look at the broader numbers, it paints a tough picture. Based on reported data, a significant number of homicide cases in Chicago remain unresolved, leaving many families without clear answers. In areas like Woodlawn, Inglewood, and other parts of the South Side where these incidents often happen, solving cases can be even more difficult due to multiple factors. That reality adds another layer to everything, because it means situations like this can remain unanswered for long periods, while the cycle itself continues moving forward without real closure. Why does it play out like this so often? There are a few real reasons behind it, and none of them are simple. First, the no snitching culture is not just talk, it's something people take seriously in these communities. Speaking to law enforcement is not only looked down on socially, it can come with real risks for those involved. That creates a situation where even if people know something, they may choose to stay quiet, which makes investigations much harder from the start.
Second, there are still gaps in surveillance, even in a city with a large camera network like Chicago. A location might have cameras, but that does not guarantee clear answers. Incidents like this happen fast, sometimes in seconds, and when individuals are masked or moving quickly between vehicles, it becomes much harder to track a clear path. By the time investigators start putting pieces together, the trail can already be cold, making it difficult to build a solid case. Third, there is a difference between local cases and the rare situations where federal agencies step in. The case connected to Durk brought in a federal approach, involving racketeering charges and larger investigations that use more resources and broader tools. That level of attention can uncover details that might otherwise stay hidden, but it is not something applied to every case. These types of investigations take time, coordination, and specific conditions to even happen. Most cases, though, do not get that level of focus. A situation involving a quick incident, a small number of individuals, and limited immediate evidence often ends up assigned to local investigators who are already handling a heavy workload. In a city that has seen hundreds of homicide cases in a single year, resources get stretched, and not every case gets the same level of depth. That is where the reality becomes tough to ignore. Without strong evidence, clear footage, or someone willing to come forward, many cases slow down quickly. It turns into a race against time, where every missing detail makes it harder to reach clear answers, and the outcome becomes uncertain from the very beginning. Unless a case like this gets pushed to the federal level, there is a very real chance Lil Mikey's murder could end up on the long list of unsolved cases that families are left carrying with no real closure. That is the harsh reality behind situations like this, where answers do not always come, and time just keeps moving forward without resolution. But when you really step back and look at the bigger picture, this goes way deeper than just one incident. King Von built an entire career off this ongoing conflict. He took real pain, real losses, and real names tied to OBlock and turned them into music that reached people all over the world.
Listeners who had never been to Chicago were suddenly locked into stories coming straight from Parkway Gardens. He turned that environment into success, into millions, while everything he was talking about was still happening in real time around him. And in a twist that is hard to ignore, his life ended at 26 during a situation far from home that escalated in seconds. FBG Durk represented a similar kind of path from the other side. He had major momentum, real crossover potential, and was starting to move in a direction that could have changed things. Before his death, he was speaking more about growth, about reducing violence, even posting messages encouraging change and supporting families affected by it. He was showing signs of trying to shift the narrative while still carrying the weight of everything tied to his past. His final moments online reflected that mindset, talking about the need for better options and different outcomes. And then, not long after, everything took a tragic turn in broad daylight on Oak Street. That contrast is what makes the situation hit even harder, seeing that shift happen right before everything stopped. Now with Lil Mikey, 29 years old, someone who had already been through difficult experiences and stayed connected to this history, his life has also been cut short. Sitting in a car at a gas station, in an area tied closely to everything that has unfolded over the last 15 years, it all circles back again. The same locations, the same tension, and another name added to a timeline that just keeps extending. And that is what makes this situation feel like a cycle that just keeps repeating with no clear end in sight. The same locations, the same history, the same patterns showing up again and again, just with different names added each time. Years pass, people come up, some make it into music, some try to move differently, but the tension never fully disappears. What stands out is how everything is documented in real time now. Every loss, every reaction, every subtle message online becomes part of the story almost instantly. People are not waiting for official reports or news coverage. They are watching it unfold live through posts, videos, and comments that carry meaning without saying too much. It creates a situation where the narrative builds itself, piece by piece, right in front of everyone. And even with all the attention, all the interviews, all the music, the core issues stay the same. There is history tied to names, to places, to moments that people do not forget. That history keeps influencing what happens next, even years later, even when it looks like things might be slowing down. The reality is, it never fully resets. It just continues under the surface until something brings it back into focus again. Looking at everything from 2011 up to now, it becomes clear this is not just a series of isolated events. It's one long timeline where each moment connects to the next, building a bigger picture that is still unfinished. From early losses that sparked tension, to music that amplified it, to major public incidents that brought national attention, all of it ties together in a way that is hard to separate. And now, with Lil Mikey's death being the latest moment in that timeline, it shows that even after all these years, nothing is truly settled. The story is still moving, still developing, and still affecting the same communities at its core. At this point, it's not even about one person or one moment anymore. It's about how long something like this can keep going without ever fully stopping. New names step into the spotlight, old names fade into memory, but the tension stays locked in place like nothing ever changed. It keeps rebuilding itself, generation after generation, with the same energy just moving through different people. What makes it even more intense is how the lines between music, real life, and online presence are completely blended now. Songs are not just entertainment. They are tied to real situations, real histories, and real emotions that people involved actually lived through. Then social media comes right behind it, adding reactions, adding layers, and sometimes even escalating things further without saying anything directly. And for people watching from the outside, it can look like content, like something to follow or keep up with. But for those connected to it, this is real life playing out in real time. Every loss hits a family, a group of friends, a community that has to deal with the aftermath long after the attention fades. That part does not trend, that part does not go viral, but it is always there. Another thing that stands out is how time does not seem to close these chapters the way people expect. 15 years is a long time, long enough for entire lives to change. But here, it feels like everything is still connected to what started back then. The same references, the same places, the same stories being carried forward like nothing ever truly ended. And that is the bigger picture behind everything you just heard. This is not just a timeline of events, it is an ongoing situation that keeps evolving while still being tied to its origin. As long as those connections remain, as long as those memories stay active, moments like this can keep happening, and the cycle keeps going without a clear finish line. The real question this situation brings up is not just who did it or why it happened, it's something bigger than that. The real question is, when does it actually end? Because if you look at everything over the years, the numbers, the losses, the impact, none of it adds up to anyone truly winning. OBlock lost King Von and saw multiple people tied to them face federal convictions, while 63rd lost FBG Durk, someone many believed had real potential to fully break into the mainstream. Both sides have taken heavy losses, and it goes way beyond headlines of music. There are families involved, mothers, children, people dealing with real grief that does not disappear just because time passes or social media moves on to the next story. That pain stays, and it keeps stacking with every new situation that happens. This has been going on since 2011, over a decade of the same cycle repeating itself. Multiple generations have grown up in the middle of this, some losing their lives, some ending up behind bars, and others still in the same environments where it all started. And even with all that time passing, the pattern has not fully broken. At the same time, the music that came from all of this continues to live on. The records, the diss tracks, the interviews, they're still being watched and streamed every single day. King Von's music still pulls in millions of plays. FBG Duck's Slide is still sitting at massive numbers, showing how far their voices reached. The art remains, even when the people behind it are gone, but the conflict tied to it is still active. Lil Mikey's death this week is another reminder that this situation is not something from the past. It is still happening right now. The reactions online, the coded messages, the patterns, all of it points to something that is not slowed down the way people might expect. So now it comes back to you. Do you think something like this ever truly ends, or does it just keep going until there's nothing left to carry it forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We really want to hear what you think. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who want to understand what is really going on. More stories like this are on the way, and you do not want to miss what comes next.